We're going to get started promptly and on, which means on time. Let me back up. On this date, July 20, 2022, we call to order the inaugural celebration of International Moon Day. And I think that deserves an applause. Our host for this Community and Technical College. The anniversary of the July 20, 1969 mission of the United States to be hereinafter known as International Moon Day. This proclamation was approved on December the 9th, 2021 by the UN General Assembly. Today, we celebrate for the very first time humankind's first steps on the moon, as well as its return to explore a sustainable living environment. We do so from the place where a large part of the Apollo program has its roots, in Huntsville, Alabama, USA, home of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. The International Moon Day will be an annual event celebrated by the general public across the planet, along with the United Nations, to foster cooperation between stakeholders all around the world, and to promote participation of future generations. Before we get started, it is necessary to make a few administrative and safety announcements. If you need to enter or exit during the program, we ask that you do so through the doors on your left, my right, and to do so between speakers or during the introductions of speakers if possible. Restrooms are located to the left and right of the lecture hall on this floor. In the event of severe weather, campus security will direct you to either shelter in place or to evacuate the campus. If an evacuation becomes necessary, exit the building by using the closest emergency exit. In the event the fire alarm sounds, exit the building by using the closest emergency exit. In the event of an active shooter, take cover in the closest classroom or inner office, secure the room, move away from the door, and await instructions by campus security. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the video screen.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Truly incredible, truly incredible. And now it is my distinct privilege to introduce Dr. Patricia Sims, president of Drake State Community and Technical College. As only the fourth president in the institution's 60-year history, Dr. Sims leads Drake State with a spirit of excellence, knowledge, and unbridled enthusiasm for student success. Under Dr. Sims' leadership, Drake State has expanded partnerships with businesses and industry and created new opportunities and pathways for students. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Patricia Sims.
Good afternoon and welcome to the 2022 Inaugural International Moon Day celebration hosted by Drake State. We are so honored to be hosting you here on our campus. And I must take a point of personal privilege to say that the significance of hosting International Moon Day is not lost on me, because this is for sure one of the highlights of my 3 years, 8 months, 20 days as president. I'm not counting, just saying. But it's an honor and it's a highlight. So on behalf of the faculty, the staff, the students of Drake State, we welcome you. This celebration being hosted here at Drake State is significant because it speaks to the inclusiveness, because we want International Moon Day to be it's a holiday for our world, a holiday to be celebrated by all people all across the nation. And so we're really excited to be a part of this celebration. This is also important for our students, for the students at Drake State and all students, because as we look at the space industry, it's important for our students to know that there's a place for them, a future, a career for them in this new economy. We hope for those of you who are new to the campus, our new friends, we hope that this reflects and signals to you that Drake State is serious about its commitment to advancing our community. That's really important. So we thank you. We thank our sponsors, Lockheed Martin, the Marshall Association, and the International Moon Day Group. And I'm especially appreciative because we have a special guest who has traveled halfway around the world to be here with us today. So please join me in giving a special welcome to Dr. Nasser Al-Sahaf, the chair of the International Moon Day Group. Dr. Nasser. I also want to acknowledge another special group of folks who are here today. Drake State has a Frontiers board of advisors, and we have some of those board members here today. Jeff Hars, the Honorable Representative Laura Hall, Mr. John Mankins, Mr. Joe Fitzgerald. We have with us our technical advisor and my counselor, I call him Coach, Mr. Richard Fisher. And my co-chair is Dr. Raymond Clinton. He is not with us today, but I want to acknowledge that group because we would not be here. This event would not be taking place were it not for the Frontiers Advisory Board. A little bit about the Frontiers Board. So Drake State established the Frontiers Research Program in 2020. And it was designed to help us advance our education mission and strengthen our relationship with NASA and Marshall. And we were so excited in 2020 to be the first historically Black community college. Jeff Hard, the Honorable Representative Laura Hall, Mr. John Mankins, Mr. Joe Fitzgerald. I don't know. How does that? That's magic. Okay. How do we? And my co-chair is Dr. Rayanne Meyer. He is not with us today, but I want to acknowledge that group because we would not be here. This event is not taking place.
Your mic muted. Sorry, that was. Thank you.
So as I was sharing, in 2020, we were awarded our first can, and it focused on additive construction and developing the future advanced manufacturing workforce. And that project has really transformed Drake State. And I'd like to share with you a bit more about the Frontiers project. So if you would play the video, Elijah, if you dim the lights just a bit.
Marks the 60th anniversary of Drake State Community and
Technical College. With a strong history of providing technical training to students, a campus located in the Rocket City, and industry partners in advanced manufacturing and aerospace, we are uniquely prepared to help develop tomorrow's high-tech workforce. Now we're forging a new chapter in college history as the first and only historically Black community college to receive a cooperative agreement through NASA's Office of STEM Engagement and Minority University Research and Education Project, or MURA. With matching funds provided by MURA, we established the Drake State Frontiers Research Team. The important research done through the Frontiers Research Program will contribute to the development of innovative additive construction techniques using 3D printing technology for application in space and on Earth. As significant as our job is, it's one part of a much larger scale project, NASA's Moon to Mars Planetary Autonomous Construction Technology, or IMPACT program. Through IMPACT, Drake State has been able to collaborate with industry-leading companies across the nation. This includes Jacobs, the largest provider of a full spectrum of engineering and scientific services to NASA. Their space exploration group, supporting Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, is helping us develop curriculum for the Frontiers Research Program. ICON, a collaborative partner of NASA's IMPACT program, is a construction technologies company using proprietary 3D printing robotics, software, and advanced materials. As a part of IMPACT, ICON welcomes students from our additive construction program into its cementitious research lab to learn more about materials and processes. ICON aims to also advise Drake State in curriculum development for the Frontiers Research Program. Working with national industry leaders and NASA Marshall Space Flight Center for a collective common good goal is of great reward. But like those organizations, we're keeping our gaze to the future and how our work today will leave a legacy of opportunity for students to come.
And so you can see that makes today significant because many small institutions, often we don't have the opportunity to expose our students to research. And so our work with the CANS has proven that our students really appreciate and thrive in the environment to develop their critical thinking, analytical, and research skills. So we're excited about that because we know that young people who are in the STEM careers, they will be building the future in space. And so we are really excited to be a part of the International Moon Day celebration. So again, welcome to Drake State. We are delighted to have you. We look forward to the rest of the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sims. Dr. Giuseppe Reibaldi is the founder and president of Moon Village Association, created in 2017. He has also acted as the executive secretary of the Hague International Space Resources Governance Working Group. Since 2013, he has served as the director of human spaceflight at the International Academy of Astronautics. For 35 years, he worked for the European Space Agency. He worked 16 years on the International Space Station program. Dr. Reibaldi introduced space policy teaching in the Italian universities in the 1990s. He's the author of more than 100 publications, as well as a popular book. He holds degrees in nuclear and aerospace engineering, as well as international relations. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the president of Moon Village Association, Dr. Giuseppe Reibaldi.
The director of human spaceflight at the International Academy of Astronautics. For 35 years, he worked with the European Space Agency. He worked 16 years on the International Space Station.
Because there is a double
Dr.
sound.
Reibaldi introduced space policy
I have a
teaching in the
problem
Italian
because the
university.
business speaker is still
He's the author of more than 100 publications, as well as a popular book. He holds degrees in nuclear and aerospace engineering, as well as international relations. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the president of Moon Village Association, Dr. Giuseppe Reibaldi.
Okay. Now that the sound is finished, can you all hear me? I don't have any feedback. Can you hear me? You can tell me whether. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. Sorry about that. So first of all, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon from Italy. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the inaugural International Moon Day celebration held in Huntsville. I would like to thank, first of all, Dr. Patricia Sims and the staff of the Drake State Community and Technical College for the organization of this event. As it's been said, it is an historical event. Sound is finished. Can you all hear me? Sorry? I don't have any feedback. Can you hear me? You can tell me where. Okay, all right. Okay, sorry about that. So, from Italy, it is my pleasure.
I have a double sound. I'm sorry, I cannot speak
in
this
Huntsville.
way.
I would like to thank, first of all, Dr. Patricia, staff
No,
of
no,
the
I
Lake
am
State
just on Zoom.
Community and Technical College for the organization of this event. As it's been said, it is an historical event. It's finished. Can you all hear me?
I think it's played two times.
I don't have any feedback. Can you hear me? You can tell me where. Okay, all right.
I'm afraid you have to go with a video which I prepared because I cannot hear anything. Sorry.
I have
A technical pause until we fix this, because he'll keep walking over himself as audio, and we won't be able to hear. Matter of fact, he'll walk over himself and walk over himself and over himself again. So let's take a technical pause and we'll come back.
To welcome you at the inaugural International Moon Day celebration held in Huntsville. I would like to thank first Dr. Patricia Sims and the staff of the Drake State Community and Technical College for the organization of this event. It is an historical event, as this is the first of a long series of Moon Day global event for the future years. An MVA is at the root of the International Moon Day, as you will hear later. The goal of the International Moon Day is to commemorate the first human landing on the moon on 20 July 1969 by the crew of Apollo 11, as well as all lunar missions carried out by other stakeholders worldwide. After me, Dr. Nasser Al-Sahaf, the chair of the IMD group, will provide indeed more detail on what's going on today and during this week. Let me remind that while the crew of Apollo 11 opened the way to humanity presence beyond Earth, this mission was only of a short duration. Now, countries around the world are planning to go back to the moon to stay. So we are witnessing the next giant leap of humankind, a permanent settlement on the moon, inhabited by people from many cultures and nationalities. The Moon Village concept is aiming to create a global community of stakeholders cooperating for a peaceful exploration and utilization of the moon, open to all countries of the world, including developing countries. The Moon Village Association has been created in 2017 to implement this concept, and it is an NGO registered in Vienna. MVA is a permanent observer at the United Nations COPUOS and is bringing to the 100 delegation present the issue which require global cooperation for lunar exploration and utilization. At MVA, we have initiated many working group and projects that will face lunar exploration and utilization. MVA is a foremost organization in researching this issue with more than 600 members from all aspects of the space sector and not, involving at least people from about 60 countries. Today, starting the global events, we are starting the global event series from the cradle of the Apollo program, Huntsville, as this has been home of the Saturn program with Dr. Werner von Braun and his team, as well as all other NASA centers. I am part of the Apollo generation, and I believe it is our duty to inspire the Moon Village generation based on global cooperation to improve life on Earth. The fact that we are here today at Drake College is a clear indication of the importance that MVA is attaching to education and associated STEM. MVA is also considered extremely important. Gender diversity, and the speaker after me are an important example of how many female participants are involved in this event. I would like to conclude by thanking again the local organizer, Dr. Sims, as well MVA and MVA and IMD teams to have made this event possible. In particular, I would like to thank Glavki for her strong and important assistance and support, as well as Vice President John Mankins, as I understand, is at home here and is also a very good friend of mine. I wish an excellent symposium. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reibaldi. Dr. Nasser Al-Sahaf has over 30 years of practical experience, culminating in 2019 as advisor to the Royal Private Affairs in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. He is an active member of Global Expert Group on Sustainable Lunar Activities and serves as chair for the Responsible Governance Subgroup. He proudly represented his country at the UN Committee for Peaceful Uses of Outer Space in 2008 and established the National Space Geodesy Center in 2009. Dr. Al-Sahaf holds several scientific degrees, including a degree in business management from St. Martin's, 3 degrees in engineering, 2 from the University of Washington, Seattle. He holds a PhD in geography from the University of California, Santa Barbara, and was a graduate of the inaugural class of the International Space University at MIT in 1988. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the chair of the International Moon Day Group, Dr. Nasser Al-Sahaf.
Thank you, Richard. Joe. Welcome everyone to the inaugural International Moon Day event at Drake State Community and Technical College in Huntsville, Alabama. First, I'd like to thank our host, Dr. Patricia Sims, President of Drake State, for allowing this great opportunity to celebrate the first ever International Moon Day event in beautiful Huntsville, Alabama. The root of the Apollo space program since the early 60s of the last century. It cannot be a coincidence that as humanity prepares to go back to the moon in a more sustainable fashion, that we also go back to where it all started here in Huntsville, 50 plus years ago. I'd be remiss not to thank IMD's founding sponsor, Lockheed Martin, whose support for IMD throughout allowed this today. The MVA, as the president of the MVA just announced, is an NGO proposed to UNOSA, the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs, the establishment of the International Moon Day in August of last year, 2021. And by 9 December of the same year, the United Nations General Assembly declared the IMD to be observed by all member nations on 20th July annually, starting this year, 2022. To commemorate humanity's achievement for not only in taking the first steps on the moon in 1969 with the Apollo 11 missions by the United States, but also to celebrate mankind's return to the moon, but this time to stay and work in the spirit of cooperation by all nations. Next. This year's inaugural theme for the first International Moon Days is designated as Lunar Exploration, Coordination, and Sustainability. More than 20 nations have programs underway to reach the moon in what remains of this decade. This year alone, 2022, has more than 10 missions to and around the moon. During the Apollo program, NASA symbolized humanity's ambition to explore our nearest celestial body by collecting and returning rocks from the moon. And since then, NASA continued observing the moon remotely via various satellites until it discovered the presence of what could only be ice shields tucked beneath the south pole of the moon. This finding created a heated frenzy of moon fever all over the world, as we see multiple nations racing to build their own space programs in an attempt to reach the moon and build laboratories and communities to work and live on the moon for extended periods of time, to collect data and run experiments, to further explore the moon and use it as a springboard to deep space exploration and to the stars. It is important to note NASA's generosity and commitment throughout its history in sharing its findings to the betterment of life for all mankind here on Earth. Next one. Today, there are more than 40 bottom-up International Moon Day events celebrated all around the world in more than 23 countries. Celebrating with us the International Moon Day to foster increased global cooperation between stakeholders all around the world, and to promote increased participation this goal for further generations. These bottom-up events are a good opportunity to educate, promote, and raise public awareness on an international level on the status and prospects for humanity and the sustainable exploration and utilization of the moon, and the need to act together to regulate activities on and around the moon. A good example of a bottom-up event is the one earlier today at the Imperial College in London. Also, the rover telerobotics mission by Exploration Analogs Working Group. The top-down event, of course, is the one here at beautiful Huntsville at the Drake State Community and Technical College. Next one. The way forward. We have an ambitious plan to double countries' involvement from about 25 now, this year, to 50 next year, with a target of over 100 countries collaborating within the next few years. Also to encourage more emerging space countries to take part based on their aspirations and unique cultural values and views of the moon. Emerging space countries are only now realizing the value of space technology and its impact on all aspects of life. It is no wonder that emerging space countries are joining forces with space-faring nations in an effort to capitalize on their resources and complement each other in their progress towards sustainable space exploration and accumulated scientific knowledge for a better future to their peoples, respectively. I'd like to salute Saudi Arabia for becoming the latest nation to sign on to the Artemis Accords just last week, with NASA in its efforts to carve out its due place among spacefaring nations and to continue in the path of its ancestors to lead the world again in its quest for accumulating scientific knowledge and space technologies for the benefit of mankind. We also plan to hold an international lyrics competition next year to secure a score for the IMD, which will last the test of time. Next one. There's a hub city concept, and the reason I'm talking about this is in an effort to find the ideal geographic location, providing time zone centrality and outreach to all continents and all peoples. I am suggesting hopefully by next year, 2023, we will have the hub city of Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, my hometown, to do not the inaugural, but at least the following events. Thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you, Doctor. Ms. Rayanne Meyer is Associate Director of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. Named to the position in January of 2022, she leads development of the center's business operations, guides daily business decisions, and oversees the center's operational policy and processes. She is a senior advisor in advancing the direction of the center's future. Ms. Meyer helps manage the center's 7,000 employee workforce and an annual budget of approximately $4 billion. She provides executive leadership across Marshall's mission support areas, as well as the center's portfolio of human spaceflight, science, and technology efforts, which touch nearly every mission NASA pursues. She has earned numerous recognitions and awards, including a NASA Silver Achievement Medal in 2019 and the NASA's Outstanding Leadership Medal in 2012. Ms. Meyer holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in Electrical Engineering from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Associate Director of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, Ms. Rayanne Meyer.
Thank you, Joe, for that introduction. I didn't recognize myself. And on behalf of the Marshall Space Flight Center Director, Jody Singer, I want to welcome Dr. Al-Sahaf as well, and all of our other out-of-town guests, and welcome everyone to this event. Try to do that better. And Dr. Sims, thank you for hosting. It's good to see everyone here, and welcome everyone virtually as well. In the 1960s, Marshall Space Flight Center helped NASA pave the way to the moon with the Saturn V rocket. Today, we are developing America's next deep space rocket, the Space Launch System, or SLS, as I'll refer to later, and the human landing systems, which will return astronauts to the moon for the first time since the Apollo missions. NASA's new lunar exploration program is called Artemis. With the Artemis missions, NASA will land the first woman and the first person of color on the moon. We'll use innovative technologies to explore more of the lunar surface than ever before and collaborate with our commercial and international partners, many of them represented here today, to establish the first long-term presence on the moon. The architecture for Artemis is already taking shape right here in Huntsville, where we've designed, developed, and tested the SLS. The rocket is now at Kennedy Space Center, integrated with NASA's Orion spacecraft, built with our partners Lockheed Martin, and awaiting the first launch on the Artemis 1 mission, an uncrewed flight test work that will send Orion around the moon and deeper into space than any human spacecraft has ever gone. We are so close to the Artemis 1 launch, and I heard that this morning it was announced that we have our first launch date, August 29th. So I hope you'll watch this summer as we undertake this historic mission. And there's a reason why we are at the forefront of the Artemis missions. Marshall Space Flight Center and the Huntsville community have played a key role in NASA's lunar exploration missions for more than 5 decades. Not only did our center develop the Saturn rockets that powered America to the moon, but we also designed and built a lunar roving vehicle that aided lunar exploration. And today, we are critical to our nation's return to the moon with not only SLS, but also the Human Landing System program. Marshall leads the agency in all aspects of human landing systems, including expertise in advanced life support and habitation systems. And we're pleased to have Dr. Lisa Watson-Morgan join us later this afternoon She is the manager of our HLS program. When the next NASA astronauts land on the moon, they will do so in an industry-led human landing system managed at Marshall by Lisa and her team. As the first human lunar lander in 50 years, this innovative human landing system will be a hallmark in space exploration history. Most people know Marshall because of our expertise in propulsion. After all, Huntsville is known as the Rocket City. But for more than a decade, Marshall has been an agency focal point for robotic lunar programs. We've managed the most extensive lunar robotic exploration campaign of any nation, the Lunar Quest program. This includes the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, a lunar orbiting spacecraft that mapped the surface of the moon to identify future robotic and human landing sites. The mission launched in 2009, and we're still receiving data from it today. One of the ways we use that data is to form programs like the Johnson Space Center's Commercial Lunar Payload Services Initiative, CLPS. CLPS is a key part of NASA's Artemis lunar exploration plans. The science and technology payloads sent to the moon's surface from these missions will help lay the foundation for human missions on and around the moon. Marshall scientists are heavily involved in some of those CLPS payloads, including Lunar Node 1, a CubeSat-sized experiment that will demonstrate autonomous navigation to support future surface and orbital operations. Another is the neutron measurements on the lunar surface payload that will detect neutron radiation at the moon's surface and also detect the presence of water and other rare elements. That data will help inform scientists' understanding of the radiation environment on the moon, and it's based on an instrument that currently operates on the International Space Station and was designed and developed by Marshall scientists. Those science missions are just two of the first 16 payloads that will fly on 2 separate robotic landers as part of the CLPS program. This is all part of a much larger campaign of NASA, the Lunar Surface Innovation Initiative, that will develop and demonstrate technologies to use the moon's resources to produce water, fuel, and other supplies, as well as capabilities to excavate and construct structures on the moon. When we do return to the moon, we plan to put in place sustainable infrastructure that will allow us to explore and study more of the moon than ever before. And the farther humans
Recording stopped.
Want to go on? Okay. And the farther humans go into deep space, the more important it will be to generate products with local materials, a practice called in situ resource utilization, or ISRU. NASA has had several robotic ambassadors working toward this goal of on the lunar surface, including the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter that I talked about earlier. Another mission we are very excited about related to this, and that is scheduled to launch later this year, is a lunar flashlight. Marshall engineers, working with our commercial and academia partners, developed one of the smallest green propulsion systems in history to propel this CubeSat that is about the size of a briefcase. Lunar flashlight will seek out water ice on the lunar surface, which could be collected and purified for drinking water, or converted into breathable oxygen, or even rocket fuel. Marshall is also involved in other technologies, like developing advanced life support systems to keep our astronauts healthy on their way to the moon, and the ability to utilize in-space manufacturing on the lunar surface. And our center's expertise in additive and advanced manufacturing is going to play a critical part of our lunar exploration campaigns. Our experience using advanced manufacturing to improve propulsion systems has already been a catalyst for growth that we see today among our industry partners in the HLS and CLPS programs. And now, scientists and engineers are studying how materials found on the moon can be used to create infrastructure that would be used for sustainable lunar presence. Dr. Sims showed a wonderful video of double impact, as we like to call it, where Marshall is partnering with industry and academia, including Drake State, to develop and demonstrate on-demand capabilities to create infrastructure on the lunar surface. Utilizing a large-scale 3D printer, the project could lead to construction of landing pads, roadways, even habitats and shelters that could protect astronauts using lunar regolith-based materials. All of these existing projects I've mentioned are just the beginning of a new era of deep space exploration on and around the moon. And in these cutting-edge missions, there's a common theme: partnership and collaboration. Our center's strength has always depended on the strength of our partnerships, and we have just scratched the surface of things that we can do together. From the NASA perspective, it's all about going farther, faster, safer, and more cost-effectively than ever before, and doing so alongside our international and commercial partners. The Apollo missions went to the moon because we were destined to explore and see it with our own eyes. When we turn to the moon now, not as a conclusion, but as preparation and a checkpoint for all that lies beyond. So thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the program.
Thank you. Mr. Joe Landon is Vice President of Advanced Programs Development at Lockheed Martin Space, where he's responsible for Lockheed Martin's space exploration strategy. Joe leads a team accountable for new business growth, strategy, and R&D for human spaceflight, robotic deep space exploration, commercial communications, weather, and earth science markets. Previously, he served as the Chief Financial Officer of Planetary Resources and co-founded Space Angels. Joe is a member of the World Economic Forum's Global Future Council on Space, and he's an Associate Fellow at AIAA and a member of the International Academy of Astronautics. He holds a Bachelor's of Science in Engineering Physics from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, an MS in Aerospace Engineering from the University of Southern California, and an MBA from the Harvard Business School. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our first keynote address, Industry and the Moon, Vice President of Lockheed Martin, Mr. Joe Landon.
First, we're going to play a quick video before I get started.
All right, great, thanks. If that doesn't get you excited about lunar exploration, I don't know what will. Again, I'm Joe Landon from Lockheed Martin. And it's an honor to join you today to celebrate the inaugural International Moon Day. 53 years ago, NASA's Apollo program did what was once thought impossible, landing a person on the surface of Earth's moon, some 240,000 miles away. And in that original space race, the Apollo missions were inspired by President John F. Kennedy's eternal words: "We choose to go to the moon, not because it's easy, but because it's hard, because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept." And after a 50-year pause in crude exploration of the harsh, airless, dust-covered surface of Earth's original satellite, we now set our sights to the night sky once again with Apollo's twin sister, Artemis. And we're pursuing Artemis for all the same reasons that Kennedy laid out. It's a big challenge that will bring out the best of humanity. But we also want to inspire a new generation of galactic explorers, welcome a new era of scientific discovery, and foster the growth of a new self-sustaining cislunar economy. And this time around, NASA won't be traveling alone. Artemis will welcome partners from around the globe, with over 20 countries having signed the Artemis Accords to ensure a peaceful and prosperous future in space. On the upcoming Artemis missions, the first woman and the first person of color will suit up and board their Orion spacecraft and explore more of the lunar surface than ever before. As part of inspiring the new Artemis generation, it's critical that we safely bring our astronauts to the moon and back. That's why Orion spacecraft is the cornerstone of Artemis. Developed by Lockheed Martin, Orion is the only exploration-class spaceship in existence and will take these new astronauts to the lunar vicinity. The Orion Artemis 1 spacecraft, an uncrewed mission, is complete. It's integrated with SLS at the Kennedy Space Center and ready for flight. NASA recently rolled out the SLS and Orion to the launch pad for successful testing. And now the teams are readying the system for launch, which is what we heard today from NASA that should be coming up here pretty soon. So we're all very excited about that. Upon launch, you can actually follow along with Orion on the mission by using your Alexa-enabled device to talk to Callisto, which is an onboard technology that brings the power of Amazon's Alexa and Cisco's WebEx to Orion. Just say, "Alexa, take me to the moon." And sorry if I triggered your Alexa to those folks watching at home. I probably did. Earth's moon is a treasure trove of scientific science and discovery, a fertile testing ground for technologies that can help humanity here and at home on Earth. And as we explore our solar system, returning to the moon will enable new discoveries in planetary science, in situ resource utilization, advanced manufacturing, power systems, technologies to operate in extreme environments, and much, much more. But before astronauts set foot on the moon, to establish that permanent outpost, scientists must understand as much about it as possible. We've got a few missions coming up here very soon that'll help us do that. LunIR is one of 10 small satellites that will ride along on the NASA Orion spacecraft on the Artemis 1 mission. This LunIR spacecraft will conduct a flyby of the moon, take a series of images using a small infrared sensor built by Lockheed Martin. And what makes this imager different is that it can map the moon in both day and night and measure things like the way the sunlight is reflected or absorbed by the moon's surface. And it's this type of thermal data that will be critical to helping identify future landing sites and for outpost site selection. Another mission coming up in 2025 is the second of NASA's new class of small, innovative missions for planetary exploration. If you turn that into an acronym, it's SIMPLEX. Lunar Trailblazer hopes to build on our knowledge of lunar water deposits and reveal more about the behavior of our moon's water. This mission aims to measure the form, abundance, and distribution of water and hydroxide to make high-resolution maps of different regions of the lunar surface. And like LunIR, Lunar Trailblazer's findings could help us better identify future landing sites for human crews. So while we're doing new science and developing new technology for the moon, NASA and industry are also changing the way we do business together. Instead of giving contractors all the requirements for a system up front that NASA will purchase, own, and operate, they're using commercial business models to buy services in many cases. We've seen this work really well in low Earth orbit with the International Space Station for crew and cargo. And for many aspects of lunar exploration, a commercial services model works better for both NASA and industry. NASA can leverage commercial speed and agility, as well as take advantage of private investments in these commercial companies. And companies can optimize their businesses to serve NASA as well as other customers like national space agencies of other countries and other commercial companies. So this new commercial way of doing business at the moon is one big difference between the Apollo program and Artemis. And Artemis will not only result in scientific discoveries and feats of human exploration, but also new businesses and new economic opportunities. Commercial companies will provide services for government exploration missions, and that'll serve as the foundation for a growing and diverse lunar economy. So in order to go beyond exploration and start developing the moon, we'll need infrastructure. So here on Earth, we take infrastructure for granted. It's all around us. You know, our phones work. We have GPS to guide us, cars, planes, and trains to get us around. Power plants generate power, and a power grid distributes it to our power outlets. And the list goes on and on. But today, when we send a mission to the moon, that mission has to do everything for itself. Every mission has to navigate, communicate all the way back to Earth, has to bring enough solar panels, batteries for the entire mission. Needs to store data, and it needs to have computing power, it has sensors. I mean, you get the idea. There's no infrastructure on the moon today to help serve these missions. So you ask yourself, like, how much more science and exploration and development could we do if even a few key elements of infrastructure were in place and able to be used and leveraged around the moon? And at Lockheed Martin, we're excited to be working on developing that early infrastructure, starting with mobility on the lunar surface, ability to move things around, and communication and navigation, which will be delivered from orbit. We're developing a lunar mobility vehicle with industry partners that will be capable of safely transporting payloads, materials, and humans across large distances on the lunar surface. The rover will deliver scientific payloads to the best and most interesting locations, which isn't always the place where you land, right? You want to land a lander in the most boring place on the moon, and often the science is somewhere else that isn't close. You know, it's a rocky crater filled place. The lunar rover will also deliver scientific or transport materials and supplies in advance of the astronauts' arrival, extend the range that human astronauts can travel during Artemis missions. We're also developing a commercial communications relay system called Parsec, using small satellites in lunar orbit to provide seamless communication between Earth and people and assets on the surface. Parsec also acts as a lunar positioning system, informing those on the ground of their exact location, hidden hazards, and even how to get back to base. So these early elements of infrastructure are really going to be critical to building up other important systems that'll come later, like power generation, distribution, using in situ resources, building habitats, and more. And as these layers are built up, we imagine and envision a bustling economy on the moon, producing economic value, enabling exploration and development further into the solar system. So looking ahead to the future, the work we do on the moon will help us to develop the systems and technologies to go further. NASA has said that we'll use the moon as a proving ground for Mars. So they'll look to build Mars-forward systems wherever possible. The rovers and spacesuits and surface habitats and power plants that we build on the moon will be built with future Mars applicability in mind, so that the teams that operate them and the astronauts that use them can gain experience and provide early feedback to drive improvements. And as a result, nearly all of the systems deployed on the lunar surface can serve as prototypes for future Mars surface systems or anywhere else we want to go in the solar system as well. And that includes, advanced life support technologies needed for the long transit to Mars. So in this way, we return to the moon as a stepping stone to the opportunity that awaits the dark depths of the solar system and beyond that we're so excited to explore and to unlock. So as we look up at the moon tonight on International Moon Day, let's remember all the great explorers that came before us and also celebrate all that is to come with humanity's exploration of our nearest neighbor and beyond. So thank you very much to Moon Village Association and Drake State, and I appreciate the opportunity to share these few thoughts with you today. And I think we have a video to wrap up as well.
Thank you, Mr. Landon. Extraordinary. Our next keynoter, Dr. John Mankins, is president of Artemis Innovation Management Solutions and Mankins Space Technology. He is vice president of the board of the Moon Village Association and a member of the boards for the National Space Society and Space Canada. Mr. Mankins was formerly chief technologist for human exploration and development of space at NASA's headquarters. His 25-year career at NASA and the Jet Propulsion Laboratory ranged from flight projects and space mission operations to systems-level innovation and technology management. He is recognized as the leading expert in the field of space solar power. He's a member of the International Academy of Astronautics. He received the NASA's Exceptional Technology Achievement Medal and the National Space Society Space Pioneer Award. Mr. Mankins holds a BS degree from Harvey Mudd College and an MS degree in physics from UCLA, and an MBA in public policy analysis from the Drucker School. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our second keynote address, The Moon Rises Over Alabama, Mr. John Mankins.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you to Dr. Sims for graciously hosting International Moon Day 2022. And thank you to all of you for attending and participating in this event. The title of my remarks this afternoon come from the class which I have taught the last couple of summers here at Drake State, which is The Moon Rises Over Alabama. And it's to convey the idea and the passion for being involved in human exploration, human development of space, human space missions to the moon here at Drake State, believing as I do that it is the students who become the engineers and the technicians who make things work, who make things that are going to be really critical going forward. Next, please. First, I'd like to share a few thoughts about the past. Next, please. Going back some 160 years, 157 years to Jules Verne and his early visions, which presciently imagined a launch vehicle staged from Florida, going to the moon, landing successfully, returning astronauts safely for a splashdown in the Atlantic Ocean to be recovered by a U.S. warship. At the same time, or in the next few years, there were other visions, such as the development of gold mines on the moon. And if there were to be mines on the moon and precious things to be extracted, then the building of new electromagnetic launch systems. All of this back more than 90 years ago. And these early visions translated after World War II and after the emergence of rocketry into more practical studies. For example, by the visionary Arthur C. Clarke in the 1940s and 50s, the idea of missions to the moon and the development of lunar settlements using lunar surface construction techniques, very much like those being explored by the MPACT program that was described a few moments ago and in which Drake State is participating. It's being led by NASA Marshall. And then a few years later, Project Horizon, an Air Force study looking at the idea of installing on the moon a base camp for U.S. activities there. And it wasn't but a few years later, following on the announcement of the Apollo program and the vision of the U.S. going to the moon, that NASA scientists published this little booklet. It's got to come up in a second. It's a time delay. If you'd go to the next one. There you go. Nope, one more. I forgot to tell you. I apologize. This little booklet, 1963, by Dr. Robert Jastrow and Dr. Homer Newell, articulating why the U.S. should go to the moon. This is a subject we'll revisit in a few minutes after the break in the panel discussion, and expressing not only the idea of going to the moon, but why it was important for U.S. taxpayers to understand it, to want to do it, to want to pay for it, and providing these early visions of what, in 1963, of what lunar systems might look like. Next, please. And it wasn't very long after that, just a matter of a handful of years, that the Apollo program had been achieved, and that the first, that's on the left, the first human footprint on the moon, the first astronauts, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, set foot upon the moon, Michael Collins up in orbit, leaving behind a variety of experiments, one of which is still operational today, the laser retroreflector, measuring with precision the distance between the Earth and the moon. The active parts are on the Earth, and the moon is just a reflector, but nevertheless, and leading over a series of years to the Apollo 17 mission. I'd like to take a moment and honor two individuals who are here with us today, Joe Fitzgerald and Jim Odom. Jim is here. Is Jim here with us? There he is. I didn't see you back there. I figured you were as legitimate Apollo veterans who are kind enough to be with us today, providing the anchor to 50 years and more in the past, and looking forward to 50 years and more of humanity's future on the moon. Next, please. So, 50 years on, where are we? I just highlight two specific missions. 10, 15 years ago, there were occasional missions to the moon. There was a mission to the moon by somebody every 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years. Everybody knew the moon was dry and dusty and toxic and dead, and nobody really cared much about it. And then, starting in the 1990s with a couple of small missions like Lunar Prospector, and leading to a series of missions such as what was then known as Selene, became Cayuga, and especially the Chandrayaan mission, so Japan and India, missions that orbited the moon and started looking at the material resources of the moon. Next, please. And leading to the extraordinarily successful and important mission Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter that Rayanne mentioned just a few minutes ago. And I wanted to highlight the L-Cross, which was a NASA Marshall mission, which basically slammed a bus-sized object into the lunar surface, blasting material and validating the remote sensing of volatile materials that had been made by these earlier missions. And then all of a sudden, as Dr. Al-Sahaf mentioned a few minutes ago, the race was on, because it had been now established, not just through remote sensing, next please, but also through ground truth, that at the poles of the moon in the permanently shadowed regions thereat, but in particular at the south pole of the moon, that there were substantial amounts of volatile materials, especially water ice, which were in fact embedded there and waiting to be harvested. This changed completely the view of the moon and the approach to the moon, not only in the US, but in the international community. Next, please. Also today, there are, because of these discoveries, the ongoing program that was mentioned a moment ago of the CLPS, Commercial Lunar Payload Services mission, and other US programs that are planned, such as Viper, the Volatiles Investigating Polar Exploration Rover. If you work at all with NASA, you know that acronyms are crucially important to your career. I assume that whoever came up with Viper is probably now an associate administrator or center director or some very august personage. Next, please. And in addition, and this is the crucial difference between the 1960s and the 2020s, it's not just the US, it's not just a superpower thing. Everybody's going to the moon. So just as a couple of examples, last year there was Chang'e 5, a lunar sample return. China is the third country to achieve the return of samples, material samples from the moon. Coming up soon, Chang'e 6, which will be another sample return from Russia, planned a Luna. It's Luna, not lunar. I apologize for the typo. 25, it's a lander and resource prospecting kind of mission. Chandrayaan 3, which is to be a lander and a rover from India, and the Korean aerospace research organization, Akari, the Danuri probe, also hoped for to be this year. Next, please. And in fact, there is an international consensus. The world is going to the moon. This is just the logos of from about a year ago of all the space agencies from around the world that are part of the International Space Exploration Coordination Group. Many of these countries are now Artemis signatories, and others that are not yet Artemis signatories are nevertheless part of this international group and are all going to the moon over the coming few years. Next, please. So what about those next few years? What's going to happen in the nearer term? Just a quick sketch. Next, please. Well, obviously, there's the roadmap for Artemis, preparing the pathway to Mars, as was mentioned, with a set of landings and infrastructure deployments planned, leading ultimately to the demonstration of long-term mission capabilities late in this decade, and the establishment of the Lunar Gateway in cislunar space. Next, please. The Gateway, one of several key parts of systems developments that are taking place at NASA. The Space Launch System, which was mentioned previously here at Marshall. Other launchers, including commercial launchers, which are in development. The Lunar Gateway, the Orion capsule, the human landing systems, a new spacesuit, and on and on. And so there's a tremendous amount of new system development now going on in the U.S. and by the U.S. partners in the Artemis program. Next, please. At the same time, there are intensive developments going on elsewhere around the world. Roscosmos is planning, and we'll see about implementation and the funding and so on, but nevertheless, they are planning and pursuing actively a series of increasingly ambitious landers, rovers, sampling systems, ISRU technology developments over the coming half decade or more. Chang'e 7 is a very ambitious mission that China's planning for a couple of years from now, including a lander, rovers, a hopper that'll be able to fly from point to point on the lunar surface, sample returns, and more, and targeting the lunar south polar regions where the volatiles, these very exciting resources, have been found. Chang'e 8, after that, later in this decade, to establish the technologies and systems for a lunar outpost, a robotic lunar outpost on the moon, leading later to human presence. LUPEX, the lunar exploration system, lunar polar exploration system, being worked by ISRO, the Indian Space Agency, and by JAXA, the Japanese Space Agency, which will include a lander and a rover, and still more. This is just a highlight. Next, please. And beyond the next handful of years in the midterm future, beyond the first human landing of Artemis, beyond these near-term missions, establishing the capabilities, next, please, will be ambitious goals such as the Artemis Base Camp, demonstration of long-duration stays on the moon, hundreds of days in preparation for more ambitious exploration after this decade, very long-range roving using pressurized rovers, partnerships, for example, there's the partnership between Lockheed Martin and General Motors developing rovers. There's another partnership, which is between JAXA and Toyota, developing a pressurized rover for the moon. In addition to the landing systems which are being pursued by NASA, there are heavy lift landing system, heavy payload landing systems being developed by the European Space Agency, and on and on. Next, please. In the longer term, there is the proposed International Lunar Research Station of the Chinese National Space Agency and Roscosmos, and they have invited partners. This will include a base in a space station in lunar orbit, a base on the lunar surface, predominantly robotic at first, and then with human crews going in the next decade. Mobile robotic systems, rovers, to operate in the vicinity of that outpost, focused on resource development, and the follow-on of this initial technology demonstration of hopping robots that can travel from one point on the lunar surface to another without going into lunar orbit. So what about the farther term future? These things, all of these things, these are all in the next decade. So this is not, you know, science fiction. This is all right now on the books, either in the US or at the European Space Agency or at JAXA or at the Chinese National Space Agency. All of these things are real programs being pursued over the coming decade. In the farther term, just to share a vision briefly with you, the Moon Village Association has been conducting over the last several years a case study looking at the vision of a lunar settlement, a permanent settlement at the south pole of the moon, which would be focused on the utilization of the resources in the permanently shadowed regions, the ice and the other volatiles that may be there, the mineral resources of the South Pole, and so on. A target location has been identified. It's in the middle of that red dash circle on the screen for a lunar settlement. It would have a convenient view. It faces toward the Earth, would see the Earth low in the lunar sky at the lunar South Pole, would have direct line of sight, both for lunar tourists and for communications. Nearby in the yellow hexagon, a spaceport, and close at hand, 3 targets for ice mining, these permanently shadowed regions. The Sputus permanently shadowed region, a feature named after Dr. Paul Sputus, who passed away recently, a few years ago, a good friend and renowned lunar scientist and engineer. The Sverdrup crater and the Gerlach crater, which are all locations where large amounts of lunar ice and other volatiles are predicted. Next, please. That's got the one. The vision of OASIS 2045 is that by a quarter century from now, i.e. between this next 10 years when all of those other programs and missions are accomplished, that within the next 25 years, not 100 years from now, but within a generation, that we can establish a permanent settlement and a sustained presence with machines and people working and living on the moon, people living, machines working, including the settlement itself in the upper left, a spaceport somewhat removed for safety and operational reasons from the lunar settlement, and mining operations using robotic systems in the permanently shadowed regions to fuel and to provide the economic juice for the settlement. Next, please. And this is really the vision that expands on all of the things that have come before. It's the idea that by having a permanent presence on the moon and sustained operations and mining and the extraction of resources, the manufacturing of fuels locally, refueling, servicing of vehicles, and on, that a whole set of new systems not found in the traditional space toolkit will be needed. Mining systems, not just spacesuits. Trucks, not just rovers. Refineries, and not just air recycling, and on and on and on. And it's these systems that are new to space, but not new here on Earth, where we see the greatest opportunities for the new graduates, which will be coming in the next few years, including from Drake State, because these capabilities are not existent in the current toolkit of the space companies. These are the new opportunities that we will be developing and celebrating in the years ahead. Next, please. And with that, I'll just close and say thank you for your kind attention, and say again what a pleasure it is to be with you today to celebrate this inaugural Global International Moon Day event here at Drake State. And I look forward to the rest of the program. Thank you.
Well, we've been at this for a while, and now's a good time to take a 5-minute comfort break. And we will join us back here in at about a quarter after, not according to that clock, but according to your own watch. About a quarter after, and we will introduce our panelists for a roundtable discussion. So please take a 5-minute comfort break. Over. Well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Please take your seats and we'll get started. We've got a very exciting roundtable discussion this afternoon featuring many distinguished panelists. As I call your name as a panelist, would you please come forward and take your seat? I'm going to introduce you one at a time, and I promise you your parents would be proud. The discussion this afternoon is entitled, Why Are We Returning to the Moon and How Will We Go? Our panelists include Mr. Jim Odom, Apollo veteran. Mr. Jim Odom began his career with the Huntsville Von Braun team in 1956, transitioning to become the NASA Marshall Space Flight Center in the early 60s. Mr. Odom then moved to the Apollo Saturn Project Office. He served as project manager for the Space Shuttle external tank for 11 years. Mr. Odom then moved to become the project manager for the Hubble Space Telescope, and then the director of science and engineering for Marshall Space Flight Center. He moved to NASA headquarters as the associate administrator for the space station, retiring in 1989, serving as executive in the industry for the next 20 years. And I think I've worked with Jim all those years for the most part, but quite a distinguished individual to have on our panel. Thank you, Jim, for joining us. Yes. Our next panelist is Dr. Lisa Watson Morgan, Program Manager, Human Landing System. Dr. Lisa Watson Morgan is a Program Manager of the NASA's Human Landing System at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. She oversees the integrated lunar landing systems that will transport astronauts to and from the lunar surface. This is a key element of NASA's bold new Artemis program to return explorers to the moon by 2024, enable a long-term human presence there by 2028, actually 2026. I'm going to move. It is hard to say. Somewhere between 26 and 28. Reigniting America's leadership in crewed exploration of the solar system and taking the next giant leap toward human exploration of Mars. Ms. Morgan, Dr. Morgan. Dr. Melissa Sampson, Lunar Programs, Lockheed Martin. Dr. Lisa Sampson leads lunar infrastructure at Lockheed Martin Commercial Civil Space. She is responsible for lunar business development and partnerships to increase off-Earth exploration and science. Dr. Sampson is a frequent speaker on topics related to the cislunar economy, next-generation technologies, and STEM. She is an American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics Associate Fellow and holds a BS in Chemistry from the College of William and Mary and an MS and PhD. Dr. Sampson. Dr. Doran Prunariu, Global Expert Group on Sustainable Lunar Activities Chair. Dr. Prunariu works as an expert within the Romanian Association for Space Technology and Industry and is a member of the board of the Romanian Space Agency. Dr. Prunariu is one of the founding members of the Association of Space Explorers. He served as president of the Romanian Space Agency, and currently he serves as vice chair of the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space Working Group on Space Agenda 2030. Dr. Prunariu is a co-author of several books regarding space technology and spaceflight. He holds degrees in aerospace engineering and a PhD in spaceflight dynamics. Dr. Prunariu. Dr. Antonio Salameri, Space Law. Dr. Salameri is an Italian space lawyer specializing in lunar governance and space resources activities. Since 2019, he's pursuing a PhD on the regulatory and enforcement aspects of space mining at the University of Luxembourg. Antonio holds a master's degree in law from the University of Catania, an LLM in law and governance from the European Union from the LUISS University, and an advanced LLM in air and space law from the University of Leiden. Within the space community, Antonio holds many leadership positions, including member of the Space Generation Advisory Council, where he leads the Eagle Action Team on lunar governance, as well as the Space Exploration Project Group, member of the Global Expert Group on Sustainable Lunar Activities, and member of the Moon Village Association, where he co-chairs the specialized group on lunar registration. Dr. Salamari. Our moderator for today's panel is Mr. John Mankins, Vice President of Moon Village Association. John, it's all yours.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you very much for all of our panelists for their participation in today's event. I am hopeful that we have mastered our IT issues with regard to remote participation, and that by sacrificing Giuseppe on the altar of the IT gods, the Zoom gods, that we will have gotten past that. Today, we're going to be talking about why and how, and these are fundamental questions for policymakers internationally about what we will do in space. And I'd like to begin, as I did in my remarks a few minutes ago, with an anchor, a point in history when these decisions had to be made and vast treasure invested in humanity's future in space. And for that perspective, I turn to Jim Odom. Jim, I'd like you, if you would please, to say just a few words about why the moon in the 1960s, if you would be so kind.
All right. You bet. Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me okay? It's certainly a pleasure here. And before I answer that question, I'd like to take just a moment to thank all the moon organizations and Drake College. And I'd especially like to commend on the part of all the Von Braun team to the contractors that are here, the special ones to me, and that's Lockheed Martin. I spent a goodly part of my life in your facilities. You were my contractor, and I would like to say that I think it was the best contractors this country had. And I think I'd like to thank you for your contribution to our space industry, and especially to the Apollo program. And that's certainly my sentiments, and it's certainly the sentiments of the whole Von Braun team, which I was blessed to be a part of. But to your question, Joe, why did we go to the moon? The first time, because it was hard. We all recognize that, excuse me, that term. But why do we go back? Because it's logical. I think if we look at excuse me, mankind's responsibility, we have a lot to be thankful for, and we have a lot of responsibilities, biblically, socially, and technically. And I think, to me, to return to the moon is kind of the next logical step that we started back early on. When I look back at the 10 or 12 years it took us to go from the idea to putting a man on the moon, then I am absolutely embarrassed that it's taken us 50 years to get back on track. And I commend this organization, and I think that the reason we go back to the moon, like I say, not only is it logical, but I think it's our responsibility as humankind to expand our understanding of not only the Earth and our human bodies, which we have learned a lot about lately, but also of the universe. And the moon is just kind of the first step. And I'm delighted to see the pictures from Webb that will give us the excitement that I think will be necessary for us to really even think about where we go beyond the moon. Mars is a very logical place. We still are in the very infancies of our galaxy and the universe, but we're learning a lot more about it, and our generation has been blessed. So to answer your question, Joe, the reason I think we ought to go back is, first, we should, it's logical, and it's a continued challenge for mankind.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good. Thank you. I will just mention, he's Joe. I'm John. It's okay. I'm flattered. I'm flattered to be.
This was on.
But it's applicable to both.
It works. Okay, thank you. But if I look that good, I'd my face. So, I'd like now to give the opportunity to make some comments on the subject of why are we going, and I don't mean the US, I mean humanity. Why are we going back to the moon? Why are we, and we've already talked about that today, but it's a crucial question. Again, as I said, in terms of investing vast amounts of public treasure and committing the lives of future scientists, engineers, technologists around the world to this vision. So, and I'd like to start with Dr. Morgan, if you would be so kind as to speak to this question.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And it can just Lisa. I'm pretty informal. So I think there's a myriad of reasons why it's important to return to the moon. I think how we're going is important. It's as important as why we're going. I mean, so for me, I sitting next to Jim, it's really an honor too. And I look at where we were as a country back during the Apollo days. And I see much of the strife and division today as I saw then. And so for me, unifying the country and the world with great scientific achievements, it is my personal number one reason. I feel like it is, when you talk to astronauts, one of the many things that they say is when you're in space and you look back at Earth, at that beautiful blue ball that we live, it changes you. It makes the problems seem not as, your arguments, it makes them seem not as important. And it makes us realize that's all we have. And so for me, unification is really key. Now, scientifically, our journey this time is so different, as you know. We're going to the lunar South Pole. So it was hard. It was hard for Apollo. It's going to be hard and different for us with this Artemis generation and the human landing system. It's hard because landing in these heavily cratered regions, it's not like, before I became program manager, it's like, oh, okay, it's really like it's not what I see on TV. It's nothing like that. Some of these craters are like the Grand Canyon. Some of them are as big as the DC area. This is an enormous undertaking. So from a technical standpoint, the brain power, the technical challenges of landing, the landing legs coming in, the entry, making sure we have enough, life support. This is, I know just the scientists would kill me for this, but 3 hours to space station, 3 days to the moon, 300 days to Mars. I know that is I took a lot of liberty there, I did it. But you'll remember it, right? 333. So the point is, this is taking quite a step. So our life support systems have to work. And then when I look back, at Apollo and all the technological offshoots, how much better, how many more trained and skilled people that we had, over 300,000 for the Apollo era. And then I look, how that will benefit humankind on Earth and, again, globally too. And I think it's important that we go peacefully. I think that's super important. I am so grateful for my freedoms and all that come with that. And I am also grateful to be part of NASA that performs very similar type explosive type, devices for peaceful purposes. And I think harnessing that kind of power for good is also, I think that's good for humankind. So I would say that's in general why we should go.
Thank you. And last, if I may, Melissa, Dr. Melissa Sampson, Lockheed Martin, please.
Great, thank you. And first, Jim, I have to say thank you for the kind words for Lockheed. We are incredibly proud and honored to continue to be part of this journey, not only for the US and our Americans, but for the world and for humanity. That aside, why are we going forward to the moon? I believe it is inspirational, and it's one of the areas that we have not explored as humans very much at all. It's only 3 days away, and the trove of scientific knowledge that is yet to be discovered, and the ability for humans to live on another body that doesn't happen to be our beautiful blue marble, is an outstanding and inspirational opportunity. Speaking for myself personally, I would love to see people on the moon. Unfortunately, I was not yet here on Earth to see that. So as part of the Artemis generation, building the pipeline of the workforce and for academia, for people interested in STEM, there are professions today that didn't exist or came about because of Apollo. So I think not only is it important for science and exploration, but there are very many benefits to all of humanity on Earth to go back to the moon.
So if I may, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed and hope for the best. And if I could please invite Dr. Doran Pruneriu. Doran, if you're online, what we're going to anticipate is a little bit of a time delay. But then, so I'll ask the question, and then we'll wait a few moments. And if you would please speak to this question: why are we going together to the moon? Please.
Hello, John. Hello to everybody. So I'm in Romania now. The time it's pretty late. It's close to 12 o'clock in the night. But I'm very happy to take part in this first anniversary of the International Moon Day. I was part of the team that promoted this initiative at the level of the United Nations. I'm very much connected with the UN Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. And of course, I was impressed by the moon exploration during the time. I was 17 years old when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin stepped on the moon. And my country was the only one in Eastern Europe showing live the moon landing. And I stayed till late in the night. It was about 4 o'clock a.m. When they stepped on the moon. I was very much impressed looking the event at a black and white TV, an old one. And of course, I was very much inspired by all these adventures, human adventures. But before that, I was impressed by the novels of Jules Verne. He wrote the novel From the Earth to the Moon in 1865. And he inspired one of the fathers of the space navigation, Hermann Ober, because in the beginning was the first speaker said a few words about Werner von Braun. Hermann Ober was one of the teachers of Werner von Braun, and they worked together a lot of time. So I met him in person. I met him. He was born in the middle of Romania in the city of Sibiu. He visited Romania many times. I visited him in Germany many times, and he told me stories about the moon. In 1929, Fritz Lang in Germany did a first science fiction movie about the moon, The Woman on the Moon, and consultant was Hermann Ober, who built a real engine for a real rocket to fly, and even built a rocket, a multi-stage rocket for that movie. They didn't fly into space, but they were pretty ready to do these things. So all this history inspired us. If we know the history, we know how to build the present and how to envisage and have a real vision about the future. All these things and all the investigations after that made on the moon, mainly by Apollo program, inspired me very much, and I really wanted to take part in this endeavor. My example could be the example of many scientists, of many people dealing with research and with a space flight. I had the opportunity 41 years ago to fly myself into the outer space for 8 days on board a space station and to admire the Earth from the outer space. So I look at the moon and I show with a finger where it is, and I really wanted to reach the moon. Even now, if you ask me, I would say, yes, I'm quite ready to fly to the moon and back. Maybe I'm not ready to fly to Mars. It is too far for me and for my age now. But to the moon, I really wanted to fly. So all these things inspire people. All these things just open new horizons. We always wanted to know how is to investigate in person other celestial bodies. And the moon is the closest one. The moon will give us an experience and a good example how to explore other planets, Mars specifically. The first settlements on the moon will show us how to live there for a longer time, how to live on other celestial body. Of course, the Apollo program opened the way, but just to stay on the moon a few days was the beginning. And it was far away, many years before the new investigations. Now we have new technologies. Now we have new horizons. Now we want to settle on the moon for a very long time. Many crews will cycle on the moon. And besides that, the moon resources will open new possibilities for the Earth industry. For sure, maybe not governments will dig the moon for resources, maybe private companies, but they are also very important in developing space activities, as we see now. So we are open, we want to know, the curiosity is very high, and it mobilizes us very much. Thank you.
You got it. Okay. Thank you so much.
John?
Very good. Thank you. And last but not least, to a newer generation, Dr. Antonino Salmeri.
John, you have the microphone.
Yeah. You said I'm on? No? They can't hear me. You muted me. Are you sure? Okay. Sorry. Thank you. So, Antonino, can you hear me?
Now we can hear you, John. I think we lost you for a while.
No, I was muted at the IT level. IT gods were not satisfied with Giuseppe. It's okay. I shouldn't have gotten frisky with them. So now, last but not least, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Antonino Salmeri. Please, your perspective on this really important personal, professional, and policy question. Sir.
Thanks a lot, John. And let me just say also thank you to the International Moon Day. Happy International Moon Day to all of you. We're here to celebrate, so let's do that. It's a real pleasure being in this very distinguished panel, working again also with colleagues like you and Dorian, and being also honored being with an Apollo veteran, discussing why we're going back to the moon. And much has already been said, so I think I only have a few remarks to add to this very important, I would say, multifaceted question. And I would say it particularly strikes me to answer this question on the day, of course, of the Apollo landing, thinking about how JFK US president answered this question in his famous speech, why we chose to go to the moon, right? And at the time, JFK said, we chose to go to the moon because the moon is there, right, as a challenge to overcome. 50 years later, we are here back reflecting on the same question, and I think we can twist the answer a little bit. If at the time the moon was there, full of unknowns and needed to be explored, I would say that now it is more of a different question. It's that we want to be there. We want to be on the moon. We want to become a civilization that expands from our planet and becomes able to go beyond. And I think also the images that Webb is sharing these days inspire us to explore the universe and to be a part of it. And the moon is the natural beginning for that. And that is the scientific, technical also question. It makes sense as a stepping stone and everything that has already been said. I will only add one final thing to that, which is the moon is our opportunity, is our opportunity to do better, to demonstrate that as humanity, we can take a blank page, as the moon is right now, and do something better than we have done on Earth. We have so many things that we need to improve here. I would say climate change is there to remind us, space debris even in the space community. There are a lot of things that we could do better. And I think the moon is that. It's an opportunity to take the best of ourselves, as JFK said, to measure the best of our energies and skills, and to use that to create a better society, to experiment better models. I think the bio that was read was a little bit outdated. Right now, I started working for an organization called the Open Lunar Foundation, and one of the goals that we do have at the Open Lunar Foundation is to demonstrate that the moon could be something that we are proud of. And right now, everyone is inspired by the moon. But one day in 10, 20 years, when we have developed something, maybe a society on the moon, we can say we're proud of what we've done there. We demonstrate that we can go beyond as civilization and as humanity. And as representative also of the young generation, in my work for the Space Generation Advisory Council, where I coordinate the policy activities and in particular also the lunar governance activities, I think that's what we want to demonstrate as a young generation. This is our pledge, our call to action to demonstrate to ourselves that the moon can become the jewel of humanity. It is already something that we all love, but we can make it even more, even better. And that's why I think it is so important that we go to the moon.
Thank you, Antonino. So now we turn, I assume, Antonino, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just making sure. Now we turn a little bit from the question of the why to the question of the how. In asking the question, how do we go to the moon now? I would make it not just technologies and systems, but processes and policies and organizational arrangements, anything that you'd like to talk about in terms of how we are going. And I begin again where we started a few moments ago with Jim Odom. So Jim, if you would speak to this question, how should we go?
Okay, I think Apollo kind of.
Lisa snatched it away from me.
You did, didn't I?
You did.
Now, the work.
That's good.
Yeah, I think Apollo kind of set the mechanics of how we can go to the moon, both from an equipment standpoint, from launch vehicle standpoint, from manned systems, from astronaut roles, and all of that. And the mechanics, that's behind us. All we have to do now is take those mechanics and take them forward. And I was excited today in looking at all of the countries that are being involved already and how many more may come online. Because I look back in my experience on Apollo and Hubble and Space Station, I got to work with virtually all of the European countries and Japan. And now then, those are still there, good partners, but a lot more are coming on board, and a lot more machines, a lot more hardware is being provided that expands. When you look at just the lander and the rover that we had, and look at that and expanding that up to basically permanent residences on the moon, there's a lot of hardware, but we know how to do it. the industry knows how to do it, and these countries do. And I think it's the involvement of the world countries that will help make this manifestation real. And I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And if I may, I will ask the question next to Lisa. First, let me turn off the mic.
Turn it back on.
And then you, anyway, please, the same question. So how should we go to the moon this time?
Well, I think it would be probably appropriate for me to answer how are we going to the moon this time? Maybe since I'm the program manager for our human landing system, I will discuss that a little bit. And so it is an interesting architecture, and I, can't kid you, and say that it's a simple one. It's not. It's a complicated architecture. But I was talking earlier, with Jeff in the audience, and we were talking about anytime you do anything like returning to the moon, going to the moon, trying to go to Mars, et cetera, those type of things. These are complex, one-of-a-kind, very unique systems that you build only typically a few of. So it is hard. For us in our Artemis architecture, clearly, the SLS, the Space Launch System, and Orion, just key to the backbone of it all. And I'm often asked, well, your provider for at least your first demo mission to the moon is SpaceX. And so do you need both? And the clear answer is yes. I mean, emphatically, we need both. We need both systems. And so for us, we do have one provider, as I said, on contract, and here very soon, we will release a second request for a proposal, and we'll have a second provider on contract. And what we believe is that while, Apollo had a different style of space race, really between nations, this is a similar race, if you will, competition, we believe helps to spur innovation. We believe we get good prices for the government, which is good for humanity. We can do more with our dollars, and they kind of help to keep each other in check. And it provides like a dissimilar redundancy, which is very important should something not go as planned for us. So we need first for the human landing system, we will launch and go into the near rectilinear halo orbit, and we wait. So we could wait in LEO, we could wait in NRHO, but we wait and we make sure we're checked out and ready to go. We launch uncrewed. There's no crew on us. So we wait, and then then SLS, the Space Launch System, and Orion, they launch. They launch the crew, and that's why it's the crux. That's why we really need them. And so all of this has to happen with mission availability and planning, and yes, it is complicated, and yes, we do know how to do it. I mean, Jim is very right about that. And I will say we have much of the advantages that Apollo didn't, because we have a lot of infrastructure. We have all that they did, and we have the years, the benefits of International Space Station, of Skylab, of all the things that have occurred since that we're building on. So we are building on that. And so we will receive the crew in this near rectilinear halo orbit. And so that's a good orbit for us to go down and explore the South Pole. And so that's, again, getting to what we're doing that's a little different. Land and perform, our science, and then return our crew to Orion. And that's for the first mission. The second mission will be with Gateway. And the Gateway is the international collaboration in the lunar, orbiting platform in space. So the Gateway is one of the items that NASA believes helps make the infrastructure sustainable and helps to promote the longer duration missions of 30 days. And that's where we want to get to. It's certainly not where we're going to be at the beginning, but that's kind of the how. And it is a lot different than how we did it on Apollo. But we're willing to take this on, and we believe this is a great challenge. It's a great challenge for the nation. And when we get the second provider on, then we'll have more competition, and we think it's a good path.
Thank you. And if I may, Melissa, Same question.
Thank you. Thank you. Building on what Lisa and Jim have talked about, speaking from the industry side, it's great to see some of these commercial type contracts coming out to drive competition, maximize the dollars and people who are available. I think it's great that there's also some opportunities for services with CLIPS as a model. And just even beyond CLIPS, what John had showed with the variety of landers and countries, there is truly a global return to the moon. Speaking also about the how, in Joe's keynote earlier today, he talked about the Lunar Mobility Vehicle, which is a rover which will be autonomously operated or function. It can also accommodate humans, but one of the areas that we're working on is to support humans and robots both on the moon. So items like the rover can be deployed ahead of humans. They can be operated without humans. They can also collaborate and support humans when they are there for various exploration and science objectives. John, I'll hand it back to you.
Okay.
Microphone's on, John.
Okay, thank you. You would turn that off.
Thank you.
So we're discussing the question of how we are going to the moon. And I'd like to, writ large, so however you'd like to address that. And Doran, if you would be so kind, what are your thoughts on this important question?
Yes, John. So the discussions went mainly to the technical means to how to go to the moon. But I want to stress that first, we need an international framework, a legal document agreed by all parties that will take part in the exploration of the moon. Of course, the Artemis Accords, they are very important documents signed till now by 20 partners of the United States, including my country, including the European Space Agency. But in the same time, there are some other important players that are not part of the Artemis Accords, and they have to agree on the same principles flying to the moon. So the Moon Village Associations organized a global expert group on sustainable lunar activities, and I have the honor and the responsibility to lead this group. And from almost 1.5 years, we work on a very powerful document defining the recommended framework and key elements for peaceful and sustainable lunar activities. A number of issues must be addressed to ensure sustainable lunar exploration and settlement in and around the moon, including, for example, mitigating the creation of debris in lunar orbit, defining standards to enable interoperability, and regulating access to natural resources. The positive feedback received on the best practices issued by the Moon Village Association from several space agencies has encouraged MVA to continue the endeavor and to organize this global expert group. So the goal of GEXLAW, the global expert group, the goals are to prepare materials that will be submitted to the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, where the MVA has a permanent observer status, to support the committee's discussions and deliberations on critical issues surrounding increased lunar activities. And in order to achieve its goals, the group intends to leverage contributions from major stakeholders of the space community, including space agencies, private companies, academia, and international organizations, involve the public by promoting outreach efforts regarding the activities of the group through the involvement of local actors at the global level, also to serve as a platform to exchange information and views with the space community on key issues for the peaceful and sustainable conduct of lunar activities, and finally support complementary activities within UN COPUOS or other international fora for the development of international framework regulating space resources utilization. So we need this framework. We need such discussions. We need to approach these things at the level of the UN Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, where by consensus we can reach some agreements, even if they will be voluntary measures or guidelines approved then later by the General Assembly of the UN. They are first steps to gather all international community to act in the same way with the same goals in exploring and exploiting the moon.
Thank you. And lastly, again, if I may, Antonino.
Thanks, John. And I mean, Doran stole my space law answer, so that actually allows me to expand a little bit more and try to merge all the different valid points that have been made in a way that we can hopefully marry technology, policy, and law. And so I will answer your question with three thoughts. I think we should go cooperatively, safely, and sustainably. And those three key fundamental criteria for going forward to the moon have different components that have to be kept in mind. So going cooperatively means that in this room here, we're having a wonderful discussion. We need to have the same discussion with other colleagues that are in other parts of the world that are planning to go to the moon. And we need to talk frankly to each other. And we need to be able to cooperate on the moon beyond the issues that we are having on Earth. And that is going to be fundamental because the moon is one. And as every engineer will tell you better than I can, it is a very small body and one where consequences of our actions spread everywhere. It is impossible to be isolated on the moon. And so one bad thing, everyone will pay the price for it. We need to be cooperating. We need to be talking to each other. And that's why it is fundamental that we keep that criteria beyond let's say, the rhetoric of it, of international cooperation, which is a fundamental principle of space in general. We need to implement it as we mean it in order to make sure that then we can go safely. Safety on the moon will be a fundamental component. We have a number of challenges to overcome. I believe we're going to touch upon it, so I don't want to go too much into it now. But we all know that there's going to be a lot of safety challenges for our machines because of lunar dust, but also for humans. Of course, as was already mentioned, we're going to need a huge life support in order to be able to survive on the moon. Going safely is going to be fundamental also from the point of coordination. As Doran said, we need an international framework, not for the sake of it, but because it will give us means to coordinate. And right now I am coordinating at the moment an international initiative called Article 11 Project. And the purpose of that is to foster information sharing under Article 11 of the Aerospace Treaty, to use that information to coordinate. If we're going to the moon, we need to tell it to the world, and we need to do that in a way that others can account this in their own plans. And then we can avoid harmful interference. That's going to be the first cause of tensions on the moon. We will remove those problems from the equation. We have a peaceful moon. We don't reach agreement on how to coordinate. We have problems with keeping activities peaceful on the moon because there will be accidents, and accidents may lead to tensions. Even unintended accidents can lead to political tensions, as we are seeing every day in the world. And third and final, we have to go sustainably. Sustainably means that we need to be forward thinking when we go to the moon. We need to be thinking about what the next generation wants to do on the moon. And we need to keep that in mind when we operate on the moon, so that we avoid the generation of waste on the moon, and we make use and we treasure the resources that we already have. As it was already mentioned, I think, John, in a wonderful presentation before this panel, we confirmed ground truth that there is a lot of ice on the moon and everyone wants to use it. But let me ask you a question. What happens if a company wants to mine this ice in order to make propellant? As you know, you need to break the H2O to get the hydrogen. What are we going to do with the oxygen? Are we just going to let it waste in the universe? We're going to lose tons of oxygen in order to make hydrogen. This is not sustainably thinking, right? What I mean with sustainability means that, yes, let's make use of the hydrogen, but let's not lose the oxygen either, because in 5 years, we may need it for humans, and we may need it for growing plants on the moon. And in any event, I think we simply cannot afford to behave unsustainably on the moon. We need to think about that circularity. That also brings me back to the beginning of my point. We need to go there cooperatively. We need to think as humanity for once, and not just as a single lineup of countries that want to do different things on the moon. Because if we go with a unified approach, we will make use of the moon in a way that each of us individually will never be able to do that. And so cooperatively, safely, and sustainably, those are, I think, the three key pillars and consequential actions that we need to keep in mind when we think about how do we go to the moon.
Thank you, Antonino. So I think we have time for one last round. We're running just a little bit late, but not too bad. And so where I would like to leave our panel discussion is perhaps with just a few thoughts from each of you on the question, and this reaches to the subjects we've already discussed, the why and the how. And I want to raise with you the question of what do you see as the most significant hurdles, near term or far term, technical, policy, human nature, economic, you choose. What are the most significant hurdles that we need to address during the next handful of years in order to realize not just the first mission, but the long-term future of humans in space in general, humans on the moon in particular? And I'd like to start again with you, Jim, if you would be so kind.
As we've all talked about, we've learned a lot in the last 20 years, 30 years. But I think that the bigger challenges that I see is just the human interactions, the human systems, and the support to the human systems on the lunar surface. The lunar environment is not real harsh, but it's not real easy either. And I think we've got to really understand the interface with the long-term human aspects, the physical human aspects of the chemistry and the physics and the environment on the moon, one. Secondly, I think the long duration, which is not something that we've had any experience with on the moon. We've learned a lot on space station. We've learned a lot about the environment and the human environment. So the duration there is going to be, I think, significant. The other, I think, real challenge is, and it was just delightful to me to see all of the notions and the people that are working on the habitats up from a rover to a big cargo truck. That's impressive. And I think making that scale jump from really the rovers up to large manned vehicles and even mining equipment, the equipment that's necessary to carry on the mission on the moon and developing it is an engineering challenge. It's not a scientific challenge, it's an engineering challenge. And I think we have the capability to do it. So in summary, I think the environmental and the human aspects we've got to pay a lot of attention to. But just the design and the development of all of the habitats and the equipment that's necessary to keep people on the moon for days and weeks and months, I think will be a challenge, but it's doable.
Thank you, Jim. And following our past sequence, I will ask now the same question, please, to Lisa. What do you think? Should still be on.
Thank you, John. So actually, I'm going to take a little different tact. I mean, clearly, I have a risk list that's as long as there are people in this city. So that's not the tack I'm going to take, though. I think it's consistency of purpose. I think that's our biggest risk. I feel like as you know, I would say so far we've had great bipartisan support, and NASA continues to often, always really actually have that, and that's wonderful. However, as you've seen in the past, programs come and go. And so I think it is really important for people to stay excited about the moon, to understand that it is a springboard to Mars and to other destinations. It is very close. We have worked so hard, so many, as you know, like when you look at CLIPS, when you look at these smaller robotics, when you look at Gateway, when you look at HLS, when you look at SLS and Orion, and all the systems that are ready and yearning for this destination. I think that consistency of purpose is going to be the hardest thing too. So, organizations and events like this continue to sell why it's important, why it's needed, that whole, visceral desire of humanity as well as just the policy and lawmakers, to make sure that they know this is important as we are moving forward.
Thank you. And lastly, here at the table at least, Melissa, if you would be so kind.
Thank you. Lisa, I have to say I second that 1,000 times. As we're talking about the many missions of Artemis and SLS and Orion, what is to come, not just this year, but over the many years. I also wanted to talk about, or at least mention, that this is a global event. This is a global pursuit over the next years, over the next decades. There absolutely will be policy and legal ramifications, and I won't steal our colleagues' thunder online. So I won't say more about that, but I also think that there could be obstacles about societal norms and cultures. And when we have humans permanently on the moon, what does that culture look like? How do the different countries work together? On a more optimistic note, the one thing I did want to throw out there is I'm excited by some of the creative areas that could come out of this, such as art and music and sculpture. So we've talked a lot about the engineering challenges and the technical challenges, but there's a creative world that I suspect is yet to be discovered as well.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I'll turn now to Doran. Doran, what are your thoughts with regard to the most important hurdles to achieving the future that we all hope for?
Yes, thank you, John. So having the experience of a space flight in an international community, I will stress the importance of the cooperation of the people, part of the crew. We'll see during the next flight on the moon, the presence in the crew of a woman, of a person of color. So in the next future, the community on the moon will include people from different nations, people with different backgrounds, with different cultures, with different beliefs, even with different religions. All these people have to cooperate, to know very well each other, to be friends, and to be very efficient in exploring the moon. Will be a big challenge to bring together such crews and to determine how compatible they could be and how efficient they could work on the moon. The experiments done on board of the International Space Station with long flights, Scott Kelly, the others who spent many months, even 1 year, on board the International Space Station, concluded in some scientific conclusions about the psychology, the sociology on board of the space station, about medical problems that could arise during a very long flight. And all those things have to be known and managed very, very well by specialists when sending people to the moon. So the moon is a celestial body, and the basis on the moon for a long time could change people, could change their psychology. And everything should be managed by specialists. Everything should be kept in the hands. And the efficiency of the crew is very important. So I don't stress the interaction with robots, the interaction with artificial intelligence will be very important as well to manage all these things. But the interaction between people is very important to have good and positive results.
Go ahead, keep going.
Thank you. Antonino, you are allowed the second to the last word. I'll hold the last word to myself. But Antonino, you, please, your thoughts on the question of hurdles quickly.
Thanks, John. It's a big responsibility. I'll try to do my best. So I'll give you 2 points. One is technical, and I'll just mention it because I do see it as a very important one, but I do not need to comment because you have the experts with you already. And I think that's landing. Landing on the moon, and eventually if we are able, taking off to come back and bring stuff back, it's going to be so critical. Every landing activity will generate a lot of dust, vibrations, and if we start landing in different places of the moon when others are operating at the same time, this will create a lot of interference. And so we need to be able to sort that out, that being with the development of certain zones that we only land there, or with the development of structure that can contain the negative consequences of landing. But we definitely, I think, need to sort that out because it's going to be so important that we avoid that every time we land, we're essentially blasting off everything else. So that's the technical challenge that I do see. I do not know how to solve it, but I do see it there. Then in terms of policy, the main challenge, main hurdle that I see at the moment is to capitalize the unique opportunity we have right now. As I said before, the moon is a blank page, right? Apart from very few things, which we need to protect, of course, and the US has been the first country passing a piece of legislation to protect human heritage and cultural heritage on the moon, there is nothing else. We have the unique opportunity to develop standards that can work in an interoperable way, also as the Artemis Accords mentioned. We have a great opportunity to develop infrastructure that we can share and use for the benefit of humankind. And we have the possibility right now to plan all of this together in the most effective and efficient way. It's like if we are designing a new city. If we take that approach, we will be able to do amazing things on the moon for a fraction of the price that we are currently spending on other things. If we don't capitalize this opportunity, which we do have because right now we're at the beginning, we'll pay the price later. And I think it will be a missed opportunity. We will look back 10, 15 years ago when we have problems, where we have duplications on the moon, where we spend a lot of money because each mission has to bring power, landing, infrastructure, power generation and storage, resources utilization. Everyone has to bring everything. And then we will say, why didn't we agree on this before? We should have done it. And that's my biggest fear at the moment, that we do not really understand the potential that we do have at this moment, and then we miss the opportunity because we will get to the moon one way or the other. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of smart people working on it, but we can go at it so many different ways, and some of them I think are wrong, even though technically they will work. And so I hope that we will be able to overcome this current fear and diffidence that we have against each other, to sit down on the table, understand that the incentives to cooperate are more than to be alone and to try and go our separate ways. And if we understand that and we act upon it, then I think we can develop a wonderful, sustainable presence on the moon. I hope that was brief enough, but also substantive.
So. Thank you, Antonino. I think it's been a really good discussion. I hope all of you agree, and really only the beginning of the conversation that we will continue to have over the coming months and years. I'd like to ask all of you to join me in saying thank you to our panelists. Thank you so much. And I will turn the podium, metaphorically at least, back over to Joe Fitzgerald for the next step in our journey.
Thank you, John. And now please welcome back. By the way, the panelists are relieved.
Yes.
Probably in more ways than one.
Very nice.
Thank you. Once again, thanks to our panelists. And now please welcome back Dr. Nasser Al-Sahaf, Chair, International Moon Day Group, for a very special announcement on the International Moon Day logo competition. Dr. Al-Sahaf.
Thank you. Welcome again. A few months ago, we decided we'll have an international competition to come up with the logo for the International Moon Day. A total of more than 50 entries from around more than 25 countries entered this international competition for the IMD logo. And a panel of 2 judges reviewed all entries and presented the International Moon Day Group with 2 logos. And we chose one of them that we deemed more practical because of colors. So, next. This is it. The gentleman, the winner of the international logo is Mohammed Afzal Rafiq from India. So a good hand for him. And he will be awarded the prize for this. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I may ask, what is the prize? No, maybe that's not appropriate at this time.
Monetary.
Monetary. Welcome back, Mr. John Mankins, also with Dr. Sahaf, for special announcements on our path forward. Please.
So before we wrap up, we just wanted to say again, thank you for the hospitality and for how things have gone. I know that Dr. Sims will come up in a few moments and offer some closing remarks. Before that, I wanted to mention that coming up in November in Los Angeles will be the Moon Village Association 2022 Workshop and Symposium. This will be our return to face-to-face discussions and meetings and working groups and activities. It'll be at the Sheraton Gateway. We're doing this in conjunction with the National Space Society Space Settlement Summit, which has also been on hiatus, a virtual situation, although they tried to go back together last fall and it was maybe a little premature, but so I wanted to just mention that we are having that event and we would love to see all of you in LA at the Sheraton Gateway at LAX the first week in November. So it's the 7th, 8th, and 9th. And then in the afternoon of the 9th and the 10th is the National Space Society Space Settlement Summit. At that event, we will also be making some
We'll be making some announcements for the International Moon Day 2023. So we'll keep that under wraps for now, but hopefully there will be somewhere in an emerging space country. So
you're all welcome.
Thank you. Let's give a warm round of applause to John and Dr. Sahaf, Al-Sahaf. Thank you so very much for being with us. Thanks for making this happen. Without you, it would not have, I assure you. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back our host, Dr. Patricia Sims, president of Drake State, for some closing remarks on what was and is truly an extraordinary afternoon of celebration. The first ever International Moon Day, July 20, 2022. Dr. Sims.
This has been an amazing program. So join me in thanking our master of ceremonies. He's been awesome. Thank you, Joe. All of our panelists, our program participants, the ABO team, and I would love to acknowledge my team at Drake State because we've been really excited to have you here on the campus and been working really hard to make sure that you have a great visit. And this is a celebration. It's International Moon Day, so we will be celebrating upstairs on the 3rd floor. So the reception, I invite you to join us on the 3rd floor. We have 3 options for getting there. We have an elevator in the front near the doors that you entered. If you go out this door, you can take a right down the hallway. There's an elevator there. If you like the healthy option, the stairs, you can join me on the stairs. That's also available. And so we're really excited to celebrate with you. So thanks to everyone. And we will close out our celebration on the 3rd floor, celebrating International Moon Day.
It's a wrap. It's a wrap.